Hey Sopranos fans, welcome to another episode here on Sopranos Street, and we are here today to discuss what if Richie Aprile became boss. The immediate problem that comes to mind is the fact that he was shot to death by Janice, and we will get back to that in a bit, but for now, when evaluating this question, we will look into how he could have become boss, when he could have done it, the problems he would have faced, who and what he would have had going for him, what he would have needed to be a successful boss, and ultimately whether or not he would have made a good boss. But who was Richie Aprile? Richie Aprile got out of jail after serving a long stint and was ready to hit the ground running. In addition to a fearsome reputation and attitude, he also had connections to the construction business, both through his nephew Vito and of his own, dating back to the spring of 1949 during his time with the Shawshank roofing crew.
Truth be told, Richie didn't actually do much work. He spent most of his days trying to get me to go to slip and fall school.
With all this in place, and with the support from Junior, which is probably who he should have actually tried to get into slip and fall school, Richie is ready to begin his ascent. So what all would have to happen for him to become boss? First and foremost, Tony would have to be out of the picture, either by death or imprisonment. Since the RICO against Tony wasn't anywhere near complete during Richie's window of opportunity, and Richie was too old school to pull the Feech LaManna move on Tony, death would be the only real way. But what would constitute Richie's window of opportunity? This is where we get back to Janice, because her killing of Richie puts a definitive end to his window, but for the purposes of this video, we will move forward as if she didn't, because this is the thing. Even if she hadn't shot him, the window was still closing since Tony was after him at that point, and even if Tony wasn't, the window was still closing because it would have had to have happened before Junior went completely downhill mentally. So even if Janice hadn't shot Richie, he would have been working with a very limited time frame. You see, Richie needed Junior for credibility since a lot of the New Jersey guys held Richie in very low regards.
Fucking creep. Oh, Rich?
On your welcome.
What happened to that man in the can?
Well, Tony, I wish I could tell you that Richie fought the good fight, and the sisters let him be. But prison is no fairy tale world.
Maddo! Go, help your mother.
You're in a little bit of denial there, too. Richie was always a disturbed kid.
Scratch that. I wish I could tell you that the sisters fought the good fight, and Richie let them be. But prison is no fairy tale world.
And that would be one of the major obstacles Richie would face. His image wasn't good. However, Richie was aware of this, and although he generally didn't care, he does show multiple instances where he tries to change that. In addition to showing nice gestures towards Tony, which is to be expected since he's the boss, Richie also attempts to do so with Livia, despite her being arguably the most hard-headed character on the show, and fails.
You see the beautiful flowers you brought me? Yes, your father has friends with class. Not like some people.
Ma, he's not one of Dad's friends. He's my friend.
He's your boyfriend?
Don't you remember me? He used to yell at me for beeping my car horn when I came over to pick up Janice.
Pimp's beep.
Beep, beep, beep.
You know, someday, somebody's gonna wash out your mouth with soap on it.
While this may have proved an impossible task for even the smoothest talker, Richie is too rough around the edges to ever pull that off, and as a result of these shortcomings, he would have the deck pretty well stacked against him. At this point, he would have Sil, Chris, Paulie, and Big Pussy that may be lined up against him. In addition to that, Furio is there, and New York may have a problem with it. As far as Furio is concerned, I don't think he would have been a problem as long as he wasn't there when it happened. As we saw, he had no particular loyalties to Tony, but if you start shooting at him, it would become personal. New York may be a bit trickier since they have been doing their Jersey business with the Sopranos for a long time, but Junior is a Soprano, and they would have had to have dealt with the Apriles at some point because Jackie was boss. So as long as the money wasn't affected, I don't think that New York would have been against Richie, but who and what would have been going for him? Besides a fearsome reputation and balls of steel, Richie doesn't have much else to work with. But if he played his cards right, he might have been able to pull off a takeover with what he did have. Let's start by talking about his crew. At this point, other than the people Junior may know, he is working with a bunch of nobodies. His main guys would be Jackie Jr., Dino Zarelli, Carlo, mostly because he has a shotgun, Matthew Bevilacqua, Sean Gismonte, and Vito. Since Vito wasn't a player yet, that would put Jackie Jr. at the top of the list, and when Jackie Jr. is at the top of the list, you may have a problem. but you definitely have a hit squad. In addition to that, he had two potential sources for invaluable information in his niece Adriana and Janice. Adriana could provide info on Chris's whereabouts, although she would probably have to do it unknowingly, and Janice could provide info on Tony, both of which would be necessary to pull off a takeover with essentially a hit squad and little else. When it comes to the actual takeover, it would have to be a blatant and open attempt to take power. Simply having Tony killed wouldn't help because too many people would be up for the job before Richie. People would have to not only know that Richie did it, but also that he did it to take control, similar to John Gotti with Paul Castellano, otherwise the title would never go to him. Since they would stand no chance of winning a war of attrition, they would have to act quickly, and there are two people who would absolutely have to die. As you know from earlier, Tony is one, and as you may have surmised, the other is Chris. Tony would have to go for obvious reasons, and Chris would have to go because he is too volatile and highly unlikely to ever forgive and forget. If they could somehow manage to take out Tony and Chris quickly, they should attempt to meet with Sil and settle it then. It's really the only possibility for a decent outcome. If they can't settle it at that point, it would become a war, and even if they won that war, what would they be left with? If they were a glorified crew before, they would barely be a street gang after. The ironic thing is that the reason negotiations with Sil would be more difficult than they have to be is the very reason they would need them to be successful, specifically with Sil, and that is Richie completely lacks in diplomatic skills. Even his genuine attempts, like giving the leather jacket to Tony, fall short. Despite its personal significance to Richie, Tony just sees an ugly jacket and you can tell what he's thinking.
Not even a black man can style that shit.
Method Man is right. Well, Prince probably could if he wanted to. But why would he?
So even if Richie had to take out another capo or two in order to become boss, it would be almost necessary to try and get Sil on his side in order for his reign to be even remotely successful. But what else would he need? The first thing he would need to do would be to get with the times, and I'm not just talking about the fashion. He needs to be updated on the new ways in which his business is conducted. He seems to have a hard time understanding that they can't be as out in the open as they used to be.
I want to get my shy business back on its feet. I keep getting these calls from my brother Jack's customers. Where the fuck are you going?
I'll talk to you later, Richie.
You want to tell me what just happened?
We're talking business with the skipper directly. You can talk to him, but not now and never here.
And that they can't get away with the things that they used to.
Got any blow?
What?
Blow, coke. Well, you don't keep it on you. I gotta go to the deli in Nutley.
Tony,
You don't sell that shit along those routes. You understand me?
I'm working with Junior on this.
I don't give a shit if you're working with Walmart. Knock it the fuck off.
This isn't very surprising though, as Richie seems to have had a hard time moving on while in jail and was perpetually fixated on the past. This is best shown through Janice.
It was a way a long time. I thought a lot about her.
10 years you thought about Janice? There were men in the camp better looking at my sister.
There were, and they put up a good fight. But Richie would not leave them be.
So, assuming Richie could have gotten with the times to some degree, would he have been a successful boss? I think in the absolute best case scenario, he takes Sil's advice very seriously, yet he still ends up constantly steering the ship near rocks. The more likely scenario is that he would end up being more like a Nicky Scarfo out of Philly and trying to make Jackie Jr. his Phil Leonetti. His reign probably would have been cut short due to arrest, given his brazen ways, but even if not, he would have had plenty of enemies ready to take him out, again because of his brazen ways. Well, thanks for watching this episode here on Soprano Street. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you at the next score.